From gardening to animals to extreme renovations, welcome to Homesteading at College Hill Farm. Welcome back to College Hill Farm. Today, tomorrow, we're planting potatoes. Here I am in the basement getting ready to do potatoes. Of course, we grow three types of potatoes. We grow the blue Adirondacks, we grow red Pontiacs, and we grow Kennebecks. Now, as far as that goes, I generally just grow one row of blue Adirondacks, one row of Kennebecks, or one row of red Pontiacs, and then about 4 or 5 rows of Kennebecks, depending on how many seed I've got when I go out. So, what I've got right here is a good example of a red Pontiac. You'll notice that there's 3 good shoots coming off of that. And what I'll do is I'll cut that that's not a red Pontiac. If you'll look right here, I don't know if you can tell too good, but that's blue. So this is a blue Adirondack. See if I can find a red Pontiac. I bet that's a red Pontiac. It's purple in here. So what I do with these is, you'll notice there's a here, and here are sprouts. So what I want to do is I want to take it and make it where there are approximately, and I know it's a red Pontiac because it's kind of yellow with a little red ring around it. I've cut that so that there are 2 sprouts, and I'll put that in a bucket, and in this one I'll cut it again so that this one has a good sprout and this one has a good sprout, and these will go in the garden tomorrow. Tomorrow morning I'm going to go out real early to beat the sun and beat the heat. It's not that hot, but it's going to be 77 tomorrow here, and I'd rather plant these at 50. You know what I mean? I'd rather plant them at 50. I'm a fat guy, and I'd rather plant them at 50. So I cut them like this, and I'll do that tonight, and that will get these potatoes ready to go. Now, what I'll have a bucket about like this. It's 2.5 gallons, and it'll be full of red Pontiacs. Then I'll have a bucket like this full of blue Adirondacks. And then I'll probably have 2 5-gallon buckets full of Kennebecks. Kennebeck's a waxy potato. It sure tastes better than the russet potatoes you buy at the store. When you cook it, you don't need butter, you don't need oil, you don't need nothing. They're better, they have a better mouthfeel, and I really enjoy the mashed potatoes from them too. But my favorite way to eat them is when they're tiny, and not new potatoes now, just regular potatoes. I like to eat them when they're tiny, and we rub them in olive oil and do them in the microwave with the blue and the reds, and oh, absolutely awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and get at this. It's the night before, so I'll get all these cut up, and in the morning I'll be ready to go. So next time we see each other, I'll be in the field. It's 7 in the morning. Getting ready to put the hillers on my tractor to start planting. Excuse me. We've got it's supposed to be 80 degrees today, so I'm out early. It's a little cool this morning. It's about 45 degrees, but it's going to get up to 80. I've got to put my hillers on. When we get down to the field, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do so that there's less talking. When I get down to the field, last night I came out and did the second tilling. I had the tiller on my tractor, and I went through and tilled another time. I tilled earlier. The way I do potatoes is I till the spot a couple of 3 weeks before. Then I come around, I wait about 3 weeks, and the weeds are starting to grow, and I till it again. That kills those germinating seeds. So now we're ready to plant. Now what I'll do is I'm going to plant in 6-foot wide rows. But the way I do it, I'll drop a potato about every foot down that 100-foot row. Then I'll sprinkle fertilizer. But now I won't put the fertilizer, I'll put the fertilizer out so that when it heals, the fertilizer will be all in the hill. It'll be kind of spread out down the row. It won't be perfectly on top of the potatoes in the row. Then once that's done, I'll come through with my healers and throw up a small hill. Not a great big hill, just a small hill. And that will give the potatoes some protection if we get a freezing temps or anything like that. But then they'll have to grow through that hill. It'll take them a little longer to get up, but it will give more space for them to start putting tubers on. So once they get up and they're about 6 or 8 inches high, I'll till through them, till through the centers between the hills, and then I'll come back and hill again and throw dirt up on top of that, so that when I'm done, my hills are about 1 foot tall, and that's where all the potatoes will grow. So I'm going to go ahead and put the hillers on. I've already put my set of cultivators on. You know, I made a set of hillers that fit on these cultivators. So hillbilly engineering. So I'm going to go ahead and get those put on, and then we'll get down to the field. Now, as you look at these hillers, one thing you'll notice is you don't adjust the attack angle of the hillers a whole lot. My tractor doesn't have downward pressure, so you leave the hillers kind of adjusted out a little. And also, when I made this attachment, I wasn't perfect on, so the hillers are a little to the left. So I'll have to adjust for that as I drive over the beds, as I make the hills over the potatoes. It'll get hot down here. The sun will get on this garden about 9 o'clock. So I like to get out here early. Got cuckleburs on me. Hate them things. We'll get started in the garden. I want to say a word or two about planting by the signs. Now, my granddad, he believed 100% in planting by the signs. Me, I'll plant by the signs if I've got time, but if I've got other stuff to do, I plant in the ground. So let's talk about Easter. Easter falls the Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. So that meant that this year, the spring equinox almost had a full moon right on top of it. So 28 days later, you get another full moon. So the full moon is going to be Friday. Good Friday is going to have a full moon on it, which is very unusual. But the way it works with planting by moon signs, generally the 5 days leading up to the full moon and the 5 days after the full moon are good to plant. The days before are good for above ground crops, and the days after are good for in the ground crops. Now, then there are the other signs about where the moon is, when the moon's in Sagittarius or Cancer, or what my granddad called it, the bowels. In the bowels or in the feet or in the legs. Well, Old Farmer's Almanac has all that stuff. I generally buy one. I haven't bought one yet this year. But I know that we always planted on Good Friday. Well, tomorrow, according to the moon calendars, tomorrow is the most fertile day of the year. And that's the 18th, the day before the first full moon of the equinox, after the equinox. And tomorrow's that. So this day is probably the second most fertile day for above ground crops. But that doesn't matter. I'm going to put these taters in today anyway, because I've got rain tomorrow night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I wouldn't be able to put them in no way. I'm going to put them in now. So what did I bring out with me? Well, you know my Easy Go is down. the tractor's just not good for sitting if I need to take a break. So I brought me a lounge chair. I've got 40 pounds of 12-12-12 fertilizer. I've got my buckets of potatoes, and I've got a hoe. And then I've got the hillers put on the tractor. That's all I'm going to need. I probably won't even need the hoe. But I'll go down through here dropping the potatoes, and you'll notice where I cut them, they've formed a nice skin overnight in the basement. So I won't have to worry about those rotting in the ground. Probably won't have to worry about them rotting in the ground anyway. Most times when I was a kid and we were planting potatoes, we just put them in the ground. We cut them that morning, and one was cutting while the others were planting. So I'm going to get at this, and you can just see what I do. Wound up with 2.5 rows, 100 feet, and then another 100 feet, and then 50 more feet. So 250 feet worth of blue Adirondacks and red Pontiacs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put fertilizer on them now. And I want to take time to talk about fertilizer for a second. Now, when you're doing fertilizer, I did a quick soil test and found that my ground was pretty well all right for nitrogen, for potassium and phosphorus. So it was okay for that, but I don't want it to become depleted. So I'm going to use a fertilizer that has both nitrogen, or has both potassium and phosphorus in it. But my soil was depleted of nitrogen. Like I expected, it was cut out of a Kentucky hayfield. So what I'll have to do over the years is I'll amend the soil. But right now, I don't have time to amend the soil. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 12-12-12 fertilizer. Well, how much nitrogen do you need? If you'll go to our Facebook page, you'll find a set of sheets that says nitrogen usage on them. And I'll tell you right now, for these potatoes, I need 1.6 ounces of nitrogen for every 100 feet. And I'll put that on 3 times through the year. I'll put it on today 1/3, or 1.6. So, but I've got 12-12-12 fertilizer. How do I determine how many ounces that is? Well, there's 16 ounces in a pound. So all you have to do, and I go over this real good in a video called Interpreting a Soil Test. And I tell you how to determine the amount of nitrogen in your fertilizer and the amount of potassium and phosphorus. Okay? So, but whip out my calculator on my phone and I go 0.12, because it's 12-12-12 fertilizer. So it'll be 0.12 times 16. And that tells me that there's 1.92 ounces for every pound of nitrogen for every pound of fertilizer. So each 100-foot row basically needs a pound of fertilizer. You know, 1.92 is not going to be too much over the 1.6 that it needs. So I'm just going to go ahead and get a pound of fertilizer and go down through there and broadcast it. Okay. And I'm not going to measure real close. It'll be eyeball pound of fertilizer. Okay. Right there is about, it's up to about here. That's about a pound of fertilizer. It's about 2 pounds of fertilizer, excuse me, because it's up to about there. It's about 2 pounds of fertilizer. That'll do 2 rows. So I want to spread it out over the 2 rows. So I'm going to get at doing that. I've got 2 rows in, and you saw I screwed up on the first row. You know, I've been gardening for 40 years, and I still screw up sometimes. I went through and I let my tractor waggle a little bit, and it exposed a lot of the potatoes and put them on top of the hill instead of down in the hill. If I'd have went over them dead center, it would have pulled the dirt up and just mounted it right over each individual potato. But I got off center, off kilter. You know, that stuff's going to happen. Don't let it ruin your day. Don't let it piss you off. Don't, because it's just going to happen. Now, if you like this homesteading kind of stuff, this gardening and preserving and canning and animals, and be sure to come to the channel, like us, and subscribe. We do this stuff every week. We upload videos every week. Sometimes 1, sometimes 4 or 5. It just depends on what's going on that week. But we try and put content on every week. So now I've got 4 more rows to do. Well, 4.5. And it's time for me to get on to the next thing.